I should have called the police. Instead, I let her sleep 10 feet away from my son. And now a powerful man was on the phone whispering my child's name like he owned it. "Ethan," he said softly, "5 years old. Bridgeport Elementary. You should think very carefully about the choices you're making, Mr. Reed." My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. "You stay away from my son," I said, but my voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded thin, small. "I'm not near him," the man replied calmly. "I'm simply aware of him. That's the difference between you and me. I prepare, you react." Then he hung up. I stood in the middle of the delivery warehouse, surrounded by boxes and forklifts and men who had no idea my world had just tilted. Because 3 nights earlier, I had let a stranger into my home, and now that stranger was the reason my son had become leverage. So tell me something. When compassion puts your child at risk, what kind of man are you supposed to be? 3 nights earlier, I came home soaked and exhausted. It was close to midnight. Ethan was asleep. Mrs. Chen had texted me that he finished his carrots and brushed his teeth without a fight. That was a win in our house. I locked the door behind me, checked the windows like I always do. Single fathers don't get to relax. We scan, we calculate, we protect. I heated leftover nuggets, ate standing up, thought about how I still hadn't fixed the dryer. Thought about how Ethan needed cotton balls for his cloud project. Normal worries, normal night. Until I flipped on the bathroom light and saw her. A woman standing inside my bathtub, soaking wet, shivering, her eyes wide like a cornered animal. "Please don't scream," she whispered. My body moved before my brain did. I stepped back, pulled my phone out, positioned myself between her and the hallway that led to Ethan's room. "Who are you?" I said quietly, deadly quiet. "How did you get in here?" She lifted her hands. "I'm not here to hurt you, I swear. I just needed somewhere dry." The bathroom window above the toilet was cracked open. Rainwater dripped onto the floor. She had climbed into my house while my son slept. "You broke into my home," I said. My thumb hovered over 911. "I remembered you," she said quickly. "From the convenience store, 3 weeks ago. You gave me money." And then I remembered. A woman counting coins outside 7-Eleven, cold, dignified, trying not to cry. I had given her $20, not because I'm a hero, because I've been close enough to the edge to recognize it in someone else. "You followed me?" I asked. "No, I noticed your street that night. I didn't plan this. I swear I didn't. I was just going to sit on your porch. But the rain wouldn't stop and I thought I was going to pass out." She was shaking hard now, teeth chattering. "My name is Mara," she said. "I'm not dangerous, I'm just desperate." Every instinct inside me screamed to call the police, because my job is not to save strangers. My job is to protect my son, but something didn't add up. If she was a thief, why wasn't she holding a knife? If she was dangerous, why was she crying? If she was lying, why did she look like someone who had already lost everything? "Are you on drugs?" I asked. "No." "Is anyone else outside?" "No." "Are you running from someone?" She hesitated. That pause almost made me press call, but then she said something that shifted everything. "I reported something I wasn't supposed to," she whispered, "and now I don't have a job or a home." I studied her face, not for beauty, not for sympathy, for threat. I didn't see one. I saw exhaustion, hunger, fear, and bruises on her wrist, finger-shaped bruises. "You sleep on the couch," I said finally. "You don't go near my son, not for any reason. You move without telling me. I call the police. Understood?" She nodded so fast it looked painful. "Yes." "Thank you, I won't forget this." "You don't get to forget it," I said. "This is the only time I do something this stupid." I gave her old sweats and a towel, waited outside the bathroom like a guard, checked Ethan's room twice. Then we sat at my kitchen table. She told me her boss had been stealing millions from his own company. She said she found proof. She said when she confronted him, he fired her and threatened her. I didn't believe all of it, not at first, but I believed enough to let her stay one night, just one. That was the plan, one night. The next morning, Ethan asked who she was. I told him she needed help. He said, "I hope she finds somewhere to live." 5 years old. already more generous than most adults. That should have been my warning. Because when a child shows you the right thing to do, you don't get to hide behind fear anymore. By the second night, she showed me a USB drive, emails, bank transfers, $18 million in fake vendor accounts. It was real, and that's when I made my second mistake. I called someone, and powerful men do like when delivery drivers start asking questions, which brings us back to the phone call, back to Burton saying my son's name, back to the realization that I didn't just let a woman sleep on my couch. I stepped into a war I didn't understand. When I got home that day after the threat, Mara saw my face and went pale. "He called you, didn't he?" she asked. I nodded. "He mentioned Ethan." She closed her eyes like she had been expecting this. "I should leave," she said immediately. "Right now, I shouldn't have dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me," I said. "I climbed through your window, that counts." I looked down the hallway at my son's room, at dinosaur blankets and nightlights shaped like stars, at the fragile world I had built with overtime hours and careful budgeting. Then I looked back at her. "You think leaving fixes this?" I asked. "You think men like that just forget?" She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Once someone powerful decides you're a problem, you don't get to quietly disappear. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't about charity anymore. This wasn't about letting a homeless woman stay dry. This was about choosing who I was going to be when someone tried to scare me into silence. The kind of man who folds, or the kind of man who holds the line. And the scariest part, I wasn't sure which one I was. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Every sound felt like a signal. Every car that slowed outside felt like a warning. I left my bedroom door open so I could see the hallway. Mara was on the couch. Ethan was down the hall. I lay there staring at the ceiling thinking about how fast everything had shifted. 3 days ago, my biggest problem was overtime hours. Now a man with money and reach had said my son's name like a chess piece. Around 2 in the morning, I got up. Mara was sitting upright on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring into the dark. "You're not sleeping either," I said quietly. She shook her head. "I keep replaying his voice," she whispered. "That calm tone, that's how he talks when he's about to ruin someone." "You're not ruined," I said. "I was." Silence sat between us. Then she said something that changed everything. "There's more you don't know." I felt my stomach tighten. "What more?" She looked toward Ethan's hallway before speaking. "The USB drive I showed you, it's not the only copy." My jaw clenched. "How many copies are there?" "One in a locker downtown, and he doesn't know about it." I stared at her. "So this isn't just about threats," I said slowly. "You're still holding leverage." "Yes." "Which means he has a reason to escalate." She swallowed. "Yes." That was the moment. The clean dividing line between helping a stranger and entering a battlefield. "You should have told me that before," I said. "I was trying to protect you." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You were trying to control the risk. That's different." Her eyes filled, but she didn't argue. "You can still walk away," she said. "Tell him you convinced me to take a deal. Let me disappear." "And then what?" I asked. "He just trusts that." She didn't answer, because we both knew he wouldn't. Men like Burton don't leave loose ends. I walked to the kitchen, poured water, leaned on the counter. My son was asleep down the hall, 5 years old. He still believed monsters only lived in cartoons. I had 2 choices: shrink my world smaller to stay safe, or expand it and fight. When I came back into the living room, Mara was standing. "I'll leave in the morning," she said, "before Ethan wakes up." "No." Her head snapped up. "No," she repeated. "You don't get to decide alone, not when the threat already landed. You don't owe me this." "I'm not doing it because I owe you." "Then why?" "Because my son saw you and hoped you'd find somewhere to live. Because I don't want to teach him that fear decides everything. Because if I send you back out there after what he said to me, I'll never respect myself again." I didn't say all of that. What I said was simpler. "Because running doesn't stop bullies," I said. "It trains them." She stared at me like she'd never heard that before. "So what's your plan?" she asked. "I don't have one yet." That was the honest answer. The next morning I dropped Ethan at school. I scanned every car, memorized every license plate, smiled like nothing was wrong. He hugged me before getting out. "Are you okay, Dad?" he asked. "I'm good, buddy. You look like when you burn pancakes." That almost made me laugh. "Go learn about clouds," I said. "We'll build the best one this weekend." When I got back home, Mara was at the kitchen table with the USB drive in front of her. "You don't have to be here for this," she said. "For what?" "For the part where you decide if you're in." I sat down across from her. "Show me everything," I said. She plugged the drive into my laptop. Spreadsheets opened. Emails, wire transfers, fake vendors. I'm not a financial expert, but I know patterns. And this was a pattern. $18 million moved in careful, calculated amounts. Emails where Burton joked about creative accounting. A message that made my blood run cold. "Fire her before she talks." Dated the day she confronted him. I leaned back. "This is real." "Yes." "And you were homeless while this sat on a drive." "Yes." "And he offered you money to stay quiet." 5%. I did the math in my head. $900,000. Why didn't you take it? She met my eyes. "Because then I'd become him." That answer landed harder than anything else she'd said. I believed her, not because the documents were convincing, but because of that sentence. "You understand what this means," I said quietly. "That if we push this, he'll push back." "Yes." She folded her hands. "I won't ask you to." "You already did the second you climbed through my window." A faint, tired smile flickered on her face. "Then say it," she said. "Say what?" "That you're choosing this." I looked down the hallway toward Ethan's room, toward the drawings taped to the wall, toward the life I'd built from scraps and overtime. Then I looked back at her. "I'm choosing it," I said. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like she'd been holding her breath for days. "Okay," she whispered. "But if anything happens to Ethan—" "It won't," I said firmly, even though I couldn't promise that. And that terrified me more than anything. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. We both froze. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Then the line disconnected. Mara went pale. "He does that," she whispered. "He likes silence. It makes people imagine worse things." I stood up. "Get your shoes," I said. "Why?" "Because if we're doing this, we're not hiding in my kitchen." We drove downtown to the locker. She opened it. Inside was a small duffel bag, another USB, printed documents, insurance. "Good," I said. "Redundancy." "You're not panicking," she observed. "I'm compartmentalizing." That wasn't entirely true. Inside I was shaking. But shaking doesn't help your kid, or your witness, or yourself. We sat in my car, staring at the river. "So what now?" she asked. I thought about the call, about Ethan's name, about the way fear creeps in quietly and makes you small. Then I thought about something else. "If he's calling me," I said slowly, "that means he's nervous." "Nervous men make mistakes." "Yes." "And powerful men hate exposure more than prison." I turned to her. "We don't threaten back," I said. "We don't bluff, we go bigger." Her eyes sharpened. "You mean federal?" "I mean bigger than him." She nodded once. Then she reached for the second USB drive. "Okay," she said. "Okay," I echoed. And as we drove toward a building I'd only ever passed on deliveries, I realized something. The night she stood in my bathtub wasn't the beginning. The phone call wasn't the turning point. The turning point was this. The moment I decided I'd rather risk losing everything than teach my son that fear wins. And once that decision is made, you can't unmake it. The federal building doesn't look dramatic from the outside, just glass and concrete. But when you walk in carrying evidence that can put powerful men in prison, the air feels heavier. Mara's hand brushed mine as we stepped through security. Not romantic, not desperate, just human. "Last chance to turn around," she whispered. I shook my head. If I turn around now, he still wins. We were led to a small interview room, fluorescent lights, metal table, no windows. An agent introduced herself. Agent Sarah Chen, calm eyes, no nonsense. You understand what happens next? She asked. Mara nodded. We hand over the evidence, you verify it, you decide if it's worth pursuing. And you, the agent asked me, what's your role here, Mr. Reed? I'm the reason she didn't disappear. That earned a long look, meaning someone threatened my son. I don't respond well to that. A flicker of understanding crossed her face. Mara laid out the documents, the emails, the transfer logs, the fake vendor IDs. The agent read in silence. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, she leaned back. This is significant, she said. Is it enough? Mara asked. It's enough to start. That was the moment Burton's control began to slip. But control doesn't disappear quietly. It lashes out first. 2 days later, he called again. This time I was home. Ethan was building his cloud model on the floor. Mara was at the table helping him glue cotton balls. My phone lit up. Private number. I answered and stepped into the kitchen. You've been busy, Burton said smoothly. You've been sloppy, I replied, a soft laugh. You think federal agents scare me. I think prison might. Silence, then his voice changed, lower, colder. You have no idea what kind of game you stepped into. Don't call my house again. You invited this into your house, he corrected, not me. He was right, that part burned. You have 48 hours, he said. Convince her to cooperate with us and this all goes away. And if I don't? Then consequences accelerate. The line went dead. When I turned around, Mara was standing there. She had heard enough. I'll turn myself in, she said immediately. Turn yourself in to what? To the narrative he wants, that I'm unstable, that I stole data. I'll take the hit. You walk away. No. You don't get to protect me at the cost of Ethan. And you don't get to decide that alone. Her voice cracked. This was my fight. It stopped being just yours when he said my son's name. We stood there locked in a stare that wasn't about pride. It was about fear, real fear. The kind that makes people make terrible decisions. Ethan's voice floated in from the living room. Dad, is the glue supposed to stick to my fingers? Normal, innocent, small. I walked back into the living room, kneeling beside him, helping him peel glue from his skin, and I felt something shift inside me. Burton wanted panic, he wanted chaos, he wanted us isolated, so I did the opposite. I built routine. That night I called Mrs. Chen over for tea. I didn't tell her details. Just enough to say we were dealing with something legal and sensitive. She looked at me for a long time. You have a good heart, she said, but good hearts need smart heads. I'm trying to use both. She nodded, then don't isolate yourselves. The next day, Agent Chen called. They're feeling pressure, she said. Financial records are confirming everything. We're moving toward warrants. How long? Days, maybe less. Less isn't fast enough, I said. Fear always makes it feel slower than it is. That night I barely slept again, not because I thought someone would break in, but because I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't just afraid for Ethan. I was afraid for Mara, somewhere between the bathtub and the federal building. She stopped being a stranger. She became someone I couldn't lose, and that made me vulnerable. The next morning I walked Ethan to school. He looked up at me before going inside. Dad. Yeah, buddy. If someone is being mean, do we tell the teacher? Yes. What if the mean person is bigger than the teacher? That question hit harder than Burton ever could. Then we tell someone even bigger, I said, and if they're scared too. I crouched down so we were eye level. Then we stay brave together. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Kids don't overthink courage. Adults do. When I got home, Mara was pacing. They know, she said. Know what? I saw a car outside again. Same one as yesterday. My pulse spiked. What kind of car? Black sedan, tinted windows. I walked to the window carefully. There was a car parked across the street. Black, engine off, no visible driver, could be nothing, could be everything. I pulled my phone out and texted Agent Chen, plate number, location. Within 10 minutes my phone rang. It's a registered vehicle tied to Burton's company, she said. They're getting sloppy. They're escalating, I corrected. Or panicking, she countered. A patrol car rolled slowly down our street 15 minutes later. The black sedan drove off. Mara exhaled like she'd been underwater. They're closing in, Agent Chen said before hanging up. Stay alert. That afternoon I lost my job. My supervisor called me into his office. We've received complaints, he said stiffly. About what? About you making personal calls during shifts. About unusual activity. Burton reaching, testing. I need this job, I said evenly. And I need stability, he replied. I'm sorry. Just like that, gone, I walked out of the warehouse holding a cardboard box. It felt familiar, too familiar. When I got home, Mara knew immediately. He did this. Maybe. It's my fault. No, I said sharply. This is who he is, not who you are. Ethan ran up to me. Dad, look, my cloud won a star sticker. I forced a smile. That's awesome. And I realized something terrifying. Burton was trying to shrink my world, reduce me to desperation, make me choose safety over justice, but I had already made the choice. Losing a job hurts, but losing your integrity hurts more. That night we sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out, silence thick. I can leave, Mara said again. You keep offering that like it fixes anything. I don't want to be the reason your son struggles. He won't struggle, I said firmly. I've rebuilt before. She studied me. You're not scared. I'm terrified, I admitted. But I'd rather be terrified standing up than comfortable kneeling. That was the first time she looked at me like I wasn't just a protector, but an equal. My phone buzzed. Agent Chen. They signed the warrants, she said. Burton and 3 others, arrests tomorrow morning. My breath left my body. Are you sure? Yes. Is he expecting it? He thinks he has more time. I looked at Mara, at the fear, at the hope. Tomorrow, I repeated. Tomorrow, she echoed. But fear doesn't disappear overnight. And as I lay in bed listening to the house breathe, I couldn't shake one thought. Men like Burton don't go quietly, and desperate men make reckless moves. The question wasn't whether he would fall. The question was, what would he try before he did? He didn't wait for morning. At 11:47 p.m. someone tried the back door, not kicked, not forced, just tested, slow pressure against the handle, like whoever was there wanted to know if we were careless. I was already awake. Fear trains you that way. I slid out of bed without turning on lights. The house was silent except for rain tapping the windows. Then it happened again. The faint metal click of someone trying to turn a locked handle. My blood went cold. Ethan. I moved first to his room. He was asleep. Dinosaur blanket twisted around his legs, breathing deep, safe for now. I stepped into the hallway and saw Mara frozen near the couch. She had heard it too. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't speak. Smart. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 quietly, whispered the address. Possible attempted break-in. The operator stayed on the line. The handle turned one more time, then stopped. Footsteps in wet gravel, a car door closing, engine starting. I didn't chase, didn't open the door. I stayed where I was because protecting means not being baited. Police arrived 5 minutes later. Flashing lights washed over the house. They checked the yard, tire tracks in the mud. Black sedan, gone. When the officers left, the house felt smaller, like the walls had moved closer. Mara stood in the kitchen shaking. This is my fault, she whispered. No, I said again, but my voice was tight, because this was the line I feared. Threats are one thing, physical presence is another. Ethan wandered out, rubbing his eyes. Dad. It's okay, buddy. Were those police lights? Yes. Did someone do something bad? I knelt in front of him. Someone made a bad choice, but we made better ones. We stayed safe. He thought about that, then nodded, good, and went back to bed. Kids accept safety when you give it to them calmly. Adults replay it all night. I didn't sleep. Mara didn't either. At 6:12 a.m. my phone rang. Agent Chen. "We know who it was," she said immediately. "Burton's driver." My jaw tightened. "He's escalating." "What?" "He's panicking," she corrected. "Warrants are being executed right now." I looked out the window. Rain had stopped. The street was quiet. Somewhere across town, doors were being knocked down. Somewhere across town, a man who whispered my son's name was realizing he had miscalculated. At 9:03 a.m. the news alert came. TechVision executives arrested in federal fraud investigation. Burton's face on the screen, handcuffed, smaller than I remembered, not powerful, not untouchable, just a man. Mara stared at the TV without blinking. "It's real," she whispered. "Yes." She sank into a chair, and then she cried, not dramatic, not loud, just quiet release, weeks of fear draining out. Ethan watched the news clip with wide eyes. "That's the mean man?" he asked. "Yes." "What? Is he going to timeout?" I almost laughed, in a way. "Good," he said seriously. "He shouldn't be mean." Simple, clear. I turned off the TV. The war part was over, but the aftermath had just begun. By noon, reporters were outside, news vans, cameras, asking about the whistleblower, asking about the single dad who helped. We didn't answer. Agent Chen advised silence. Burton's lawyers would try damage control. They'd paint Mara unstable. They'd suggest she fabricated. The next move would be reputation. And that's where things got harder. That evening, my supervisor called. "I may have made a mistake," he said awkwardly. "About what?" "Letting you go. Apparently the company received a complaint." Burton again. He tried to squeeze me professionally before the arrest. "I can reinstate you," my supervisor continued. I looked at Mara, at Ethan, at the news replaying quietly on mute. "I'll come back," I said, not because I needed pride, because stability matters when you have a kid. The next week blurred into statements, formal interviews, documentation, Mara preparing to testify. And then came the hardest part, the quiet, when adrenaline fades, when there are no more flashing lights, just normal days, normal dinners, normal bedtime stories. Mara stood in the kitchen one night holding a mug. "I don't know how to go back to being normal," she said. "You don't," I replied. "You build a new version. I don't even know who that is. You're the woman who didn't take $900,000. She smiled faintly. "That doesn't pay rent." "What?" "No," I said, "but it builds something better." She looked at me carefully. "And what are we building?" There it was, the question neither of us had touched. "We're not building out of fear anymore," I said. "We're building because we choose to." "And what if when this is over, I don't need to stay?" "Then you don't." I meant it. Choice is different from rescue. She walked closer. "You'd really be okay with that?" "No," I said honestly. "I wouldn't be okay, but I'd respect it." She studied my face like she was measuring something deeper than words. "I don't want to stay because I need protection," she said quietly. "I want to stay because when I almost lost everything, this felt like home. That hit harder than the break-in, harder than the threats. Home." Ethan ran in holding his cloud project. "Look, I fixed the top part." We both looked, cotton balls slightly crooked, glue still visible, imperfect, strong. "That's solid," I said. He grinned. I didn't give up. I looked at Mara. She saw it too. The metaphor sitting right there on the table. That night after Ethan was asleep, we sat on the couch. No tension, no panic, just breathing. "You know," she said softly, "if you had called the police that first night, none of this would have happened." "I know. You would have been safer." "Probably." She turned toward me. "Do you regret it?" I thought about the back door handle turning, about losing my job, about fear at midnight. Then I thought about Ethan's cloud, about Burton in handcuffs, about Mara sitting here. "No," I said. "I don't regret it." She reached for my hand, not desperate, not grateful, equal. And for the first time since that night in the bathroom, I didn't feel like I was protecting her. I felt like we were standing side by side, because courage isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's just refusing to shrink when someone tries to scare you smaller. Burton thought he could leverage fear. What he didn't understand was that fear, shared honestly, turns into strength, and strength doesn't whisper children's names, it stands up. The trial didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like reopening a wound. By the time the court date arrived, the headlines had cooled. Reporters moved on to newer scandals. Burton's face wasn't on every screen anymore, but for Mara, it was all still fresh. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not temperature, energy. Burton sat at the defense table in a tailored suit, clean-shaven, calm. You wouldn't know he tried to break into my house. You wouldn't know he threatened a 5-year-old. That's the thing about powerful men. They look ordinary when they're cornered. Mara's name was called. She stood. And I swear to you, she looked smaller for half a second. Then she straightened, walked to the stand, didn't look at him, didn't need to. The prosecutor walked her through everything. The discovery, the fake vendors, the emails, the offer of money, the threats, her homelessness. When they asked about the night she broke into my house, she didn't flinch. I didn't break in to steal, she said clearly. I broke in because I was freezing, and I remembered one person who had treated me like I mattered. I felt the weight of every eye in the room turn toward me. Single dad, delivery driver, unplanned witness. Burton's attorney stood, smiled politely. Ms. Collins, isn't it true you were angry after being terminated? Yes. And isn't it possible your accusations are exaggerated out of resentment? No. Isn't it true you had nowhere to go, no support system, no financial stability? Yes. So you were desperate? Yes. And desperate people sometimes make reckless decisions. She paused, then answered calmly. I was desperate for safety, not revenge. The attorney tried harder. Did you develop a personal relationship with Mr. Reed during this time? Yes. The room shifted slightly. And did that relationship influence your decision to escalate this matter legally? She looked at me then, not for approval, not for strength, just steady. No, she said. My integrity influenced my decision. Mr. Reed simply didn't look away. That line stayed in the air, didn't look away. Burton never met her eyes, not once. After hours of testimony and evidence presentation, the plea agreement was finalized in open court. Burton stood, and this time he had to speak. He admitted to the theft, admitted to firing her, admitted to attempting intimidation. When the judge asked if he had anything to say regarding the threat made toward a minor child, the courtroom went silent. I regret my tone, Burton said carefully. Tone. That's how men like him describe fear. But the judge didn't soften. 10 years federal, asset seizure, public admission on record, gavel down, done. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Agent Chen stepped forward. Mara declined to speak. So did I. This wasn't about spotlight, it was about closure. On the drive home, Mara was quiet. You okay? I asked. I thought I'd feel bigger, she admitted. You feel smaller. No. She looked out the window. I feel human. We picked Ethan up from Mrs. Chen's. He ran toward us. Did you win? I crouched down. Justice happened. He nodded seriously. That's good. That night the house felt different. Lighter, but not complete, because survival adrenaline had faded, and now we had to decide what we actually were. After Ethan went to bed, Mara stood by the kitchen sink staring at nothing. What now? She asked. You tell me. She took a breath. The FBI offered me a consulting role, helping other whistleblowers navigate investigations. It's not glamorous, it's not corporate, but it matters. That sounds like you. It also pays enough that I don't need to stay here out of necessity. There it was, the real question. I don't want you here because you need me, I said quietly. She turned. I don't want to be here because I need you. Silence, but I don't want to leave either, she added. My chest tightened. Then don't. She walked closer. You're not scared of what people will say. About what? Single dad, woman who broke in, trauma bond. I let out a breath. I'm scared of teaching my son the wrong lesson. And what lesson is that? That we only help when it's convenient. She stepped into my space, not rushed, not fragile. What if the lesson is that we choose who stays? That hit, choice, not rescue, not obligation, choice. I don't want to rush this, I said. I don't either. We've been in crisis mode. Yes. So we don't decide based on adrenaline. Agreed. We stood there for a long second, the kitchen quiet, rain tapping lightly against the windows again. I'd like to try, she said finally. Try what? Being here because I want to be, not because I'm scared. And if it doesn't work, then we're adults. That made me smile. Emotionally healthy conflict resolution, who would have thought? She reached for my hand, and this time it didn't feel like protection. It felt like partnership. Later that night, I checked on Ethan. He was asleep with his cloud project beside his bed, cotton slightly crushed, glue lines visible, imperfect but strong enough to hold. I realized something then. The hardest part wasn't letting her in. It wasn't fighting Burton. It wasn't even the threat at my back door. The hardest part was this: letting myself want something again. After years of just surviving, after years of keeping my world small and controlled, wanting something opens you up to loss, but shutting down guarantees it. The next morning, Mara made coffee before I woke up. It was small, ordinary, domestic, and somehow more powerful than any courtroom victory. Ethan walked in, rubbing his eyes. Is Mara staying? He didn't ask it like a child. He asked it like someone who already knew. For now, I said. He nodded. Good, I like our team. Our team, not my house, not my rescue, not her crisis. Team. And I realized something else. Burton thought power meant control, but real power is standing in your kitchen after surviving something ugly. And choosing connection anyway. That was the part he would never understand. The house didn't explode into some perfect fairy tale after the trial. There was no dramatic kiss, no swelling music, no instant certainty. There were dishes, laundry, bills still due, Ethan still refusing vegetables unless they were hidden in spaghetti sauce. And there was something quieter, something steadier: choice. Mara didn't move out. She also didn't slide into my bedroom like it was automatic. We took it slow. Dinner conversations, school pickups, grocery lists, therapy sessions, real life. One evening about a month after the sentencing, I came home from work to find Ethan and Mara at the kitchen table arguing very seriously about glue. It needs more support, Mara was saying. It's strong enough, Ethan insisted. I leaned in the doorway watching. What are we building? I asked. A bridge, Ethan said proudly, out of popsicle sticks. I looked at the structure. It wasn't perfect, but it was balanced, carefully layered. Bridges don't need to look strong, Mara said softly. They just need to hold. Ethan beamed. I don't know why that hit me so hard. Maybe because that's what we were doing. Not building something flashy, just something that holds. That night after Ethan went asleep, Mara and I sat on the porch. Rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. I signed the consulting contract, she said, with the FBI. She nodded. Whistleblower protection program. I'll be helping people before they fall all the way through. That sounds like you. It feels like me. She paused, and I signed a lease termination today. My stomach tightened. For the apartment. Yes. Silence stretched between us. I don't want two homes, she said carefully. I don't want a backup plan. You don't owe me permanence, I replied. I'm not giving you permanence, she said. I'm choosing it. There it was again. Choice, no desperation, no survival, no fear. I'm not staying because you saved me, she continued. I'm staying because when everything burned down, this felt real. I swallowed. You're not staying because you need protection. No. You're not staying because you're afraid of being alone. She smiled softly. I'm staying because I'm not afraid anymore. That was the difference. Fear had brought her to my bathroom. Courage kept her at my table. A week later, Ethan came home with a permission slip. "Family day at school," he announced. "You can bring 2 grown-ups." 2, he didn't hesitate. He wrote both our names. No conversation, no explanation, just certainty. At family day, I stood in a kindergarten classroom surrounded by paper suns and crooked alphabets. Mara knelt beside Ethan's desk while he explained his cloud project to her again like it was brand new. "This one's cumulus," he said proudly. "Fluffy but strong." Fluffy but strong, I caught her eye. We both knew. We weren't dramatic, we weren't flashy, we were just holding. Months passed. Burton disappeared into prison news cycles. His name faded, but the consequences stayed. Mara spoke at small conferences, not for fame, for impact. She never once told the story like a victim. She told it like a woman who made a choice. And every time she finished, she came home. Home, not the apartment, not the couch. Home. One rainy night, long after headlines died and life felt steady again, Ethan asked a question from the backseat. "Dad." "Yeah." "If Mara never climbed into our window, would we still be us?" I glanced at her in the passenger seat. She was watching me carefully. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe not." Ethan thought about that. So breaking rules can be good sometimes. I almost laughed. "Not the breaking part," I said, "the choosing part." "What choosing part?" "Choosing to help, choosing to stay, choosing not to be scared." He nodded slowly. "That's better than being scared." "Yes," I said, "it is." That night after Ethan fell asleep, Mara stood in the doorway of my room. No hesitation, no crisis, just quiet certainty. "You still don't regret that first night?" she asked. I thought about it. About the back door handle turning, about losing my job, about fear tightening my chest. Then I thought about family day, about Ethan writing both our names, about her coffee in the morning. "No," I said, "I don't regret it." She stepped closer. "You know what the hardest part was for me?" "What?" "Believing I deserved to stay." I shook my head. "The hardest part for me was believing I deserved more than survival." We stood there, not dramatic, not cinematic, just 2 people who almost lost everything, and decided not to shrink. Later, lying awake beside her, listening to the soft breathing of my son down the hall, I understood something clearly for the first time. The scariest night of my life wasn't when someone tested my back door. It wasn't when a powerful man threatened my child. It wasn't even when I chose to walk into a federal building with evidence in my hands. The scariest night of my life was the one where I had to decide whether fear would define my home. I chose differently. And that changed everything. Because some promises don't start with "I love you." Some promises start with "I won't look away." And I didn't. He stayed curious. She stayed brave, and I stayed. And that was enough.